Howdy, howdy. Welcome to Legal Roundup. I'm your host, Tyler Davis, and today we're going to be reacting to some very cool shorts on TikTok about different car wrecks and things like that that are injury related. And Sean Chun, one of our associate attorneys, is here with me to react with me and potentially tell me how he would look at it, or how a lawyer would look at a wreck like this. From a certain standpoint, and try to determine who would be at fault, as gruesome as that may be. So we're just going to go ahead and get started here. I was watching this one earlier, and so they get in front of him and they do this, and then they
back
just
into him. That's wild.
They just back right into him. So I'm like, okay, so obviously the thing is here is they intentionally back up into the other car. So in that instance, you would obviously, if they didn't have the dash cam footage, and the person in the Civic were to get a lawyer, they would have. I would imagine that the probability of the person in the truck being able to prove that they were without the footage would be able to prove that they were at fault.
Yeah, that's a really difficult one, because obviously with the dash cam you can see what's going on, but barring there being no witnesses that are available for the trial or anything, looks like 4 people's words versus potentially 1 person's word without that dash cam.
So in the video, I know I don't have the audio going here, but the lady is on the phone, I guess, with her husband. And she's like, "Oh my God!" And she's like, "Yeah, this person just swerved in front of me, and they just backed up into me." So I mean, I guess when somebody's on the phone with someone, even if they're hands free, that doesn't count as an eyewitness, I guess, because they're not actually.
No, that would actually fall under hearsay. That they're, I guess, hearing what their wife is saying at the point, and they are not there in the time to actually tell how it went down.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank God we have dash cams. That's so silly.
Yeah.
That's so goofy. Who does that?
It is, and the crazy thing is, with that dash cam, there could be an argument made for the drivers in front not only being sued for negligence, but say assault or battery.
That's what I was.
Because that to me looked like an intentional act.
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, wait a minute. So on the up and up, how? I mean, they didn't hit and run, so obviously there's nothing like that there. But I would think that would be attempted, or at least, like you said, probably like assault, I guess, because it doesn't look like anyone was injured. But in the case that they backed up into them and say they were elderly and not in a truck, or in like a Civic or another Civic, and let's say that on the other end they were in a truck instead, and they backed up into them and it crushed the front of the car and it kills them. I guess that would technically be considered vehicular manslaughter at that point.
It could definitely fall into that. When you talk about manslaughter and murder, it's the intent.
Yeah, that's right.
That really matters, and it's hard to tell the intent from that. If I were to just guess, it seems like for insurance purposes, possible insurance fraud maybe, which if they didn't, I guess, have the intent to do any serious damage, it could definitely fall under manslaughter in that situation you described.
That's really crazy how just because of intent it changes. But in the notion that it's an accident, then obviously that's not there. But I guess trying to prove that they had, obviously they have the dash cam, so that's obviously intentional. You don't just stop and then back up into somebody.
Yeah, and man, that would play out very different without a dash cam, especially in a state. I know for Mississippi, I don't know if this is for all states, but if you hit someone from behind, you are presumed at fault. Yeah. And there's a rebuttable presumption there where you can provide evidence for why you are not, which in this case would be the dash cam.
Yeah.
But taking the 4 people's words of the car in front of them versus this one individual, it would be hard, I guess, to convince a jury that one person's word weighs more than 4 others.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, without dash cam footage, I would be willing to even question if, even with dash cam, obviously with dash cam footage, they would see it. That was that if it was maybe, I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes because I see cases a lot that I've read about where they have dash cam footage, but somehow their lawyer was able to find a loophole where the person with the dash cam that was hit was still found at fault. In, say, a state like Mississippi, where if you hit someone in the rear end, you are automatically presumed at fault, no matter what. And it's just so crazy. Now, I'm sure in states like California or something like that, or New York, where if you hit somebody, regardless, you're, probably, it could go either way, I feel like. There's just so many of them.
Yeah.
So many. It's hard. It's crazy that there's a trend where it's like my parents actually got the call. I don't understand.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so old now. I turned 30 and now I'm just absolutely unplugged. Here's a good one. It even asked who's at fault. So it's this one's a bit insane. Okay, wait. I guess it's part of a compilation.
Goodness.
Good God. This isn't the one I intended, but that's okay. So it looks like they sideswiped the cars that were parked. Yeah, but it still caused a pileup. I imagine that would be kind of a complicated one I mean, obviously there's footage, so they're able to prove fault there. But let's say that there's not a camera. In the case that somebody sideswiped all these cars, I mean, obviously evident that they would be at fault for that. But then that's a funny thing, because my fiance, my wife, was in an accident before we met, before she was my wife, and before she was my girlfriend. And I believe she was in high school, and she was waiting in a turn lane, and somebody came up and hit her, which caused her to be sent into the car in front of her, which caused that car. It was like a domino effect.
Yeah.
But somehow they were able to justify that she was at fault, even though she was sitting in traffic already before the person came up and hit her and pushed her into the car in front. I don't know how that would be, or how you would even figure that out.
I'm not sure on that one. That's, wow.
So this is the one that,
Okay.
So obviously they kind of come into their lane, no turn signal, flip over. But who's really at fault? I mean, I guess it would still fall on the white car, even though they took the most damage.
Unfortunate. That looks like some severe damage right there. But under the rules of the road, you're supposed to make sure that if you're going to merge lanes, that you can do it safely. And in this situation, obviously didn't appear that they could merge lanes and do it safely. Now, oh man, that is...
It's just so, and it's so fast. And
no turn signal, or not turn, no turn signal for merging lanes either. They just come straight across.
And from what you can see, I don't even see it blinking. It happens so fast. I'm so glad for the advent of dash cams, because I feel like if we didn't, I imagine the previous law world of personal injury before dash cams were really popularized as far as a consumer product.
Yeah.
Was probably a whole different beast. I imagine that the number of people that have probably been served that could have been innocent has got to be astronomical.
Yeah, and just thinking from the first clip we saw, the person backing up, I'd assume they got that idea from somewhere. And it was probably in the case that someone doesn't have a dash cam, that it is now my 4 words versus your individual driver's word.
That's nuts. It's so nuts that we live in a day and age that we have it now, which is great. But another that people are willing to wreck their own car and cause a collision. So, but yeah, I see videos like that all the time where it's people in Mustangs. I don't know what it is. Let's see. Trying to find some good stuff. Some real good stuff. You know, there's one. I'm gonna bring that one up too because it's a good idea. Because we posted it a long time ago. It's on Twitter, so forgive me. And this one is not. It's still a motor vehicle accident, but it's not. It's actually a guy on a motorcycle, which is I'm gonna get into lane splitting a little bit because I know in Mississippi they made it legal. I guess back in 2017 to where you can lane split. You know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Where you know.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, you ride in the middle on the line. Which, in my opinion, I think that it should be legal in all states. No offense, motorcyclists. I just think that at any point in time, it puts them in more danger compared to if they didn't, if it was illegal. But I feel like people, regardless, are going to do it. And at a fault, you know, if somebody just so happens to be dipping and they're not going very fast, but you think, oh man, I'm just cut up through the middle, and they open their door to, you know, spit, because I mean, we live in the South, so there's so many people that dip, and my dad did that all the time. Yeah, here's another one, which is kind of like obvious.
Ooh, would not recommend that.
Yeah, so they go, obviously they're road raging with the F-150. And taking the median is obviously, you don't ever take the shoulder. It's highly illegal, highly dangerous, and this is why.
Just trying to cut in between two cars like that, too. Ooh,
Yeah,
definitely would not recommend that.
Yeah, so it's obviously at the root of that, the person that would be negligent would be the person in the car, but I could see where somebody might try to fight it. Say the person
the
in
white
the
car contributed,
Yeah.
which in Mississippi, I can't speak for every state. You know, you have different types of allocation when it comes to fault, whether you're a contributory state or a comparative fault state. And the white car say they were also injured in this, and they wanted to file suit on the erratic driving car. Depending on how a jury weighs their contribution of negligence, they could receive nothing.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I think this is a great example of, obviously, there's dash cam footage, and they brake checked him in an instance like this, especially in Mississippi. I guess it's kind of the same, except the other one, they obviously intentionally.
Yes.
This is also kind of intent-based, but let's say maybe their parking brake locked. I mean, is that would you think that could ever be an occurrence, or is that something that they even talk about in school as being a possible happenstance?
What I've learned in law is almost anything seems possible. Now, they may not teach you of it because of how rare it could be, but anything is possible. And here, with the dash cam footage, it does sure appear like the party up front is at fault. But on the other side, you know, they'll say that the vehicle behind was traveling too closely.
That's true.
And then there's also the presumption of that they rear-ended them. Now, with this video, I'd like to think a jury would be able to decide that the up-front driver is at fault, but juries, you don't always know which way they're going to go. And you could make an argument that the back car was following a little too closely, where if you remember going back to, not driving school, but driver's ed.
Yeah.
And, you know, they give you the 2-second rule in all this.
That's right.
It's for a reason, and it's so that you have time to stop in case of something like this. And while I do believe that the driver at fault would be up front, there's an argument to make that they were driving too closely. And this could come into the allocation of fault and how that could affect how much you're able to earn from a lawsuit.
That's interesting. So, that is so crazy that even something like that would determine how much you can get from your claim.
You know, say, depending on your state, you know, if they find this 50-50, you could get 0, you could get 50% of what I guess you're asking for.
See, I didn't know that. That's nuts. Because I know that I've heard of that before, and doing a little reading and research for us. It's just like, wait, so there's like a 50-50? So if you hit somebody and they can find you partially at fault still. And I feel like a lot of these rear end accidents, which are probably the most common, would at least, I mean, would you agree? Probably most accidents, especially, I mean, most of them are fender benders.
Yeah.
I mean, the odds of them being catastrophic every time are, it happens. It's more than none, but in a singular state, I think that probably Mississippi, which is probably why if you hit somebody or rear end somebody in Mississippi, you're presumed at fault because we have so many rear end accidents. But from my angle, if I was on a jury, I would look at this and say, because with my experience driving, and I'm no one to really talk because I drive way too fast most of the time. And I try to drive like a grandpa, but there's some times that you just can't help it. As a car enthusiast, I see, okay, yeah, he's kind of riding right here. Like, if it were me, I would think from my perspective, that would be pretty good distance. But as you can see, that's not enough time to stop. And like you said, the 2-second rule, or the way my stepdad used to teach me was for every tenth of a mph you drive. So if the speed limit sign says 45, you need at least 3.5 or 4 car lengths in between you and another person's bumper, because odds are if you stop, you're going to make it within a few feet.
Which is, in the cases I've dealt with while we've been here, this is a big reason why we hire experts, an accident reconstructionist.
Okay.
They're very knowledgeable with dealing with accidents in prior, or through having degrees in physics where, they can tell you going this speed, you need this much space in between you to stop. And that can be weighed into an expert's opinion on whether who's at fault or not.
You see, I've always wondered if it gets that deep in cases sometimes with trial.
It sure does.
With trying to determine, because I imagine when people start getting into situations like this where it's like, oh, well, they hit them, they rear-ended them, they're presumed at fault. Okay, well, hold on. We have dash cam footage, and we can see that there's an obvious brake check here. So where are we going to meet here in the middle? And then having to get somebody like an expert, like you said, to do the physics on it. 'Cause I'm no physics expert, but I know that the rule of thumb is always kind of, especially when you're on the interstate for commercial vehicles. My dad has driven commercial pretty much his entire career. And what he tells me is there is essentially a 12 car length rule or a 1,200 foot rule or whatever it is, 12 something. And the thing is he the way he does it is he would like to keep whatever the length of his trailer he's carrying is plus part of the bobtail 2 times and then the truck, the actual bobtail end. And then that's how much distance, that's why they keep so much distance in between you and your bumper. But I see it all the time where I'll have an 18-wheeler on my ass.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just kissing it. And I'm like, dude, if you have to stop, I'm going to be a slinky.
Yeah, not going to be able to.
And if you're in an older car, man, with like pipe framing, that stuff is super dangerous. This is the one I wanted to look at, which is the one with this motorcycle accident where the dude gets hit off the bike. So as you can see, he comes up, and there's just barely enough room. They squeeze him, and he's toppled over. I mean, it looks like he got up and he limps away.
Yeah.
But in this instance, I know it's probably it happens so fast. I'm gonna restart it so you can see it a little. So
it looks like he hits the side mirror of this car on the right.
Yeah,
Am I seeing that right?
Almost looks like they're kind of coming over a bit, and you can kind of see right here. They're not really moving from their spot, but he thinks he's got it, and then it looks like he kind of misjudged it. So, but in a state where lane splitting is legal, I guess you could count that out, obviously, and let's just say that it is. And you're not at fault there, because I feel like if you break the law, that automatically.
I don't know if I'd go that far, because I'm not the most well versed in lane splitting and how that works. But if I were to assume that it works the same as, say, merging lanes, where you got to make sure you can do it safely.
Right.
To me, here, I don't know if he had the room to necessarily say do this safely.
Yeah.
So I'd have to know more on those laws, but to me, it looks like the motorcyclist here is the cause of the accident. It doesn't seem the car on the right is really moving over. They're both in their lanes, and it just doesn't seem to me he has the room to get through there.
And what sucks is from this angle on this cam is that you can't really tell who is, because since it's on this blind side of the car, when he comes up, it looks like he hits the mirror or something, or maybe they nudged over just a bit and he could have just lost control, because that's all it takes.
Yeah.
And with a big bike like that and saddlebags, I mean, you're gonna he just lost it. I mean, so it looks like, because I mean, boop, hits that car, then he's down and he's injured, but then he's at fault.
Yeah, so unfortunately, he may not have a claim there. It's very unfortunate for him, but you know, if you're going lane split, I would recommend making sure you can do it safely.
And does road rage or anything like that? Like if somebody gets out their car and tries to fight somebody, does that entice any kind of personal injury? So if I mean, obviously it's assault if they actually hit you, but at that point, since you're on the road, would you think that there's probably ever been an instance where somebody has gotten into a wreck? I mean, obviously, and probably got out and beat the hell out of somebody, or what would the stipulation of that be?
Well, there could, I guess, be more than just assault, you know. Well, let me start with it. Assault from a civil and criminal side are different. You know, when you think of assault, you think getting beat up or anything like that.
Right.
But from the civil side, it's putting someone in imminent fear of apprehension. So realistically, and this may depend on your state and how the courts view it, if you got out of your car and you're aiming a gun at someone, you could be sued for assault. And now, while that wouldn't be criminal, I guess assault or battery, it would be from a civil sense.
Okay. Because you were in fear for your
You
life.
were putting someone in fear of imminent apprehension.
And that makes it a civil. Whereas if they actually get out, physically do harm to you, that at that point is criminal because they've crossed the threshold of, okay. See, I've always wondered because some people will tell me, oh no, it's a civil all the way through, and then you can get them with criminal charges after. It's like, okay, well, I get that, but what at one point does it separate it? So that makes a lot of sense.
And this is all on the state too, because I believe my understanding is criminally wise in Mississippi, assault and battery are kind of interchangeable depending on who charges you, but they seem to be very interchangeable when it comes to the criminal side in Mississippi.
That's what I've wondered about Mississippi, and it's kind of the same thing with like domestic disputes, because Mississippi handles domestic stuff really weird too. Because I know if, like, let's say for example, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, they get into an argument at a house, and let's say the cops are called, or let's say the husband calls, and they're just getting really, really aggressive with each other, slamming doors, throwing some fists, and he's just trying to, get it taken care of. I know that now, I think the law changed quite a while back, maybe 17, 16, if I'm not mistaken. Before, if it depended on who called, so if like the man called or the woman called, the other opposite that's being accused would go to jail. Well, now if you call, you both go to jail, no matter who's at fault.
Really?
Supposedly. That's what I've heard. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I've heard. And that I was like, so they just take them both to jail? Well, it's hard to prove because there's typically no eyewitnesses unless there's kids involved. And then nowadays, you can't really take, I guess, the word of a minor, but I mean, I've seen cases where they do anyway. So it's just it's so weird, Mississippi's way of dealing with assault, anything domestic, I've noticed. So yeah, I've seen this video so many times. Oh,
goodness.
I mean, just absolute ripping it. It actually looks kind of fun. I'd do that if I could.
You could do it safely.
Yeah, if I could do it safely, like Evel Knievel style. So my thing is obviously they're working a wreck on the other side of this video, funny enough. Would you say that the tow truck driver would have any kind of reprimand from that, from being maybe parked a little too like close in the road? Maybe he should have pulled off.
Crazy enough, it's a possibility depending on the state. You know, in Mississippi, if say there's something like you're cleaning up debris in the road or something like that, you are supposed to put out little flags or cones
Yeah.
that block everything off and signal it. Now, from what I've seen, you know, if you put this in front of a jury, no jury's probably gonna find the tow truck guy at any type of fault.
You just put it to you'll just
Yeah, you show that video to a jury. I don't know if a jury's finding the tow truck driver at fault, but this looks like it's Georgia. I can't speak for Georgia laws, but typically here you need to at least put up cones in the road, or at least have the road blocked off or signaled from a certain distance away that, hey, you know, there's someone in the road.
Yeah, dude,
which,
there's
I mean, the
nothing.
driver should have seen it. If I'm being honest, the driver might have had your thought, and he just wanted to try it, and this was his one chance.
I mean, you know, raise hell, praise Dale. You know what I'm saying?
Rest in peace.
I've heard of crazier things. So I mean, that is just, dude got some serious air. I can't believe he cleared that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took the tow truck's lip off and everything. And funny enough, it looks like that's the tow truck driver or one of the emergency workers standing in front of it at the beginning. He's just chilling. Yeah, how did he not?
No clue.
How did
Wow.
he not? Yeah, no clue. Just on his phone. This is what's wrong with America. You're the problem. Jesus. I just can't believe it. So yeah, obviously somebody did not have their Wheaties, because it looks like he's on the phone. There's no cones or anything. Oh yeah, dude's cooked. I bet money that their laws have got to be similar to ours, because I know Alabama's a little different, but similar. I don't know, man. That's crazy.
It's crazy. That's a real clip and not out of a movie.
Yeah, right? You know, some of the things these people pull off out here, I'm surprised. And that's like, you ever seen any of those images where there's like a car that has somehow launched itself up into like power lines and it's just hanging there?
Yes.
It's like, how did you manage that?
In fact, I saw it. God, it's been within the last year. I can't remember where I was. Somewhere in the Jackson area.
Oh, like here? Like you
Yes.
saw like
Here,
IRL?
yes. It was probably within a mile of my house. And there was a man who was able to somehow have launched himself up and got his truck stuck in a tree about 15 feet up in the air.
All right, no, I got to see if I can find that real quick. I got to see. Oh, this is a good one. I know you've probably seen this one before, where the truck is taken off and boom!
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, how did I mean, at that point, in an instance like that,
Ooh.
what do you think? What do you think? Who would be at fault? Would the guy, I mean, is there a way that they classify things as like an act of God, or just like a...
Yeah, the
know?
act of God is for sure a thing in a courtroom. You know, if you hear of, say, a tree falling randomly out of nowhere under
Right.
no one's control. And now this situation, it wouldn't be classified as an act of God. And believe it or not, there is actually a possibility that truck driver could be at fault.
Really?
Now, would it be a stretch? Yes. But, you know, say he had some type of knowledge that he's been having issues with his tire, and say he's been driving before and that tire's popped off and he just put it back on and then hopped back on the highway.
It's possible.
And he had knowledge that that was a possibility he could be at fault. And not necessarily just the truck driver, but, you know, say that he got his tires replaced that morning or rotated or anything like that. You know, there's a possibility that maintenance could have been wrong. Or say he bought that truck and came just off the lot. There's a possibility the manufacturer could be at fault in that scenario.
See, that was the first thing that came to my mind, is with modified vehicles, because I drive a modified vehicle. Would that pose any kind of, you know, in that instance, would that pose any kind of like if something, let's say you drive a lifted truck like that, obviously that it does not, you know, it's very aggressive stance on that truck. So if you didn't have the right spacer on there and it just popped off, would it be his fault? Would it be the product manufacturer's fault? Would it be the mechanic's fault? You know, who would you look at in
Yeah.
that instance, right? So,
You could start, I guess, with any of them, but I believe a lot of it comes down to, do they have knowledge, or should they have known that this was a potential risk? You
okay.
know, if, say, that mechanic rotating the tires that morning put it on and was like, you know, I don't know if I put that one on right, but we'll let it go. Well, now he may be at fault. And like mentioned earlier, say the driver, say he changed his tire earlier today because he popped one. He said,
Yeah.
I don't know if I put that one on right, but I'll just make it home. And that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he knew, or possibly should have known, that this was a possibility.
Yeah. Okay. So, needless to say, it could potentially end up being on them as far as falling liability. But let's say in the instance that it's not, then essentially the person in the Kia would just be out of it, right?
Unfortunately.
Golly, that you
uh,
see, that's so interesting, man. But I mean, obviously, they would probably be found at fault, I would think. I mean, some way, shape, or form, there's got to be a reason that tire just came off.
Well, yes, but once again, you know, if there's, I mean, you know, if a bolt breaks randomly,
It just
it's
breaks.
not control. Yeah, and it's just something that happens, and there's no reason anyone should have known that that bolt had the chance to break or causing this. Then it's unfortunate, but there may not be anyone in that situation that could be found at fault.
I mean,
Now you'd think, based off seeing that yeah, someone's
Yeah.
got to be at fault. Something
Yeah.
happened to that tire. Doesn't necessarily happen randomly, but once again, anything's possible from what I've seen. So.
I mean, I'm seeing this, and you know, my thing is, I think about what if they didn't torque the wheel down or something? Because I know it's to get that stance like that. It's really popular to put wheel spacers on, which just pops the wheel out some. On top of running a more aggressive offset on your wheel or your rim, and then if you don't have it torqued down right, I mean, it could just pop off. I mean, I've had it when I had my truck. I didn't have anything like that. I just drove an S10 and lug nuts came off of it all the time. Now, was it a crackhead in Jackson taking my stuff off when I went to go and hang out with friends in Jackson, or was it just coming off because I didn't know how to change the tire properly back then? But I mean, I never lost a tire. So for him to lose a tire, something had to have broken off of the spindle in order for that tire to have came off like that. Because if one bolt comes off, okay. But for the whole thing to separate, that's, in my eyes, I would think that there's got to be a reason of why the torque tore it off. Because there has got to be an ungodly amount of torque for that tire's spindle or the wheel spindle to break like that.
And in a case involving something like that, that would be a good time to have some type of expert witness that can actually speak to something like that and explain it to a jury and help them understand how this could have happened.
Yeah, on a scientific, technical level, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's somebody we should get in. We'll have to go through the list and see if we can find like an eyewitness and kind of make a compilation of all this stuff and kind of ask them and plug them and see, how they would deduce it, because it's just so interesting. It's fascinating to me because you have stuff like this that it is like a freak accident.
Yeah.
You're in the oil field and, you get backsplashed with oil and it melts your skin off, things like that just happen. I mean, I'm not going to go out here and say that Ocean Gate or something like that was like a obviously a singular event, but that kind of was specific. They had warnings, they knew. But in the instance of something that just happened, everything should have been working fine. Everything was checked out. Everything was tested. I mean, it happens all the time on racetracks too. Guys lose tires all the time just because one of the pit guys didn't put it on right, or maybe he torqued it too much. Because there is a torque rating on your lug nuts, believe it or not. And if you don't have it torqued correctly, they can break, they can come off. It can cause all kind of issues. Just even, for example, my power steering pulley. I've replaced it 3 times on my car because I didn't know that it needed torque specs. And I was like, okay, well, it just said tighten it. So I ended up going through like 3 sets of power like power steering pumps and pulleys because I wasn't torquing it down right. But I was over torquing it. So what was happening is it was on the spindle, but it was so tight that when it would go to revolutionize, it would flatten a peg every time. And eventually it flattened enough that it popped off and put me on the side of the road about 3 or 4 months ago. And then I went and did some reading and invested in a torque wrench, and let's say it hasn't came off since.
Crazy how that works.
Yeah, right? It's funny how, you do a little research and you do it the right way, things work.
Yeah.
So I just hope that it doesn't, I mean, that is nuts, though, just the damage. I wonder if those guys are all right. That's in California. My God.
That's terrifying.
I wonder if it happened in California. It's crazy to me that they haven't outlawed lifted trucks in California for reasons like this. They're so crazy. And then they get hit again with the same tire. Wow. Yeah, so that is just nuts, man. I can't almost believe it. November is National Drunk Driving Prevention Month. And I feel like to end the episode on a dark and dismal note, as I started the last one on a dark and dismal note. Obviously, it's bad to drink and drive. Obviously, it injures millions, if not thousands, every year. But the thing is this time of year, during the seasons of the holidays, you have a lot of people that are depressed and probably should seek professional help rather than be out on the road. And I mean just sloshed. Whether they're coming back from a Christmas party, please, I would urge anyone to, before they decide to get into a car, if you are just, absolutely bad, really at all, you should not get in a vehicle, period.
If you even question it, you should not be in a vehicle driving.
Absolutely. And, the thing is a lot of wrecks happen this time of year because of it. Just in a case like this was earlier this year, but there was another wrong way accident like this last year, around this time, where somebody was drunk. They got into the wrong lane and thought they were doing good. Next thing they know, they're slammed into somebody and they took the life of somebody. In some cases, people get injured, but people lose their lives every day due to drunk driving. But it's important during November to that we notice that it is a problem, that people do suffer with seasonal depression. Some people do struggle with even driving with depression or anxiety, and it's important to know, some things that you can do to prevent it. One, if you are drinking, call an Uber, call a Lyft. In Mississippi, we have more than plenty of public transportation routes that you can take. There's plenty of options for you. And there's so many people here that are good people, that are nice. Odds are you can probably call up a friend that's not doing anything and they will come and get you for sure. I don't care who it is. You can call one of us at the firm and we'll probably come get you. It's just something that you should always keep in your mind, especially everyone going to their Christmas parties and leaving Thanksgiving. I know it's easy to get ahead of ourselves and get in the car and be like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. No, you're not fine. You should call someone, get a ride, or beforehand plan, have have a ride scheduled for you to come and get you later. It's important, really important. I just kind of wanted to touch on that for a second. And, if you are hit by a drunk driver, make sure you call 601-202-1111. That's 601-202-1111. Call Pepper and Odom Law Firm. We'll be there for you. If you're hit in an accident, if you're hit by a drunk driver, if you're on your motorcycle, let's say you are lane splitting and you are in a wreck, we are there to help you. But to end off on a better note, so we've kind of looked at quite a few things, quite a few videos, and we've, seen, what can kind of determine fault. And I think the biggest thing is regardless of the situation, you should get an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest reason of getting an attorney is because you don't know how to determine fault. You might be in a situation like that of in the Kia where you need an expert, in the field, um, to help you get through your case because the next guy isn't probably gonna know. Oh well, it could have tore off this way or that way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think having an attorney in your back pocket will allow you to be able to not only determine, uh, who's at fault, but quite a few other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything that you can recommend, Sean, as far as what to look out for if you're in a car wreck and you think you don't need a lawyer? What would you say to somebody that thinks that they might be at fault and maybe they've been in an accident where they've rear-ended somebody,
Mm-hmm.
but they know for a fact that that person stopped
Mm-hmm.
and intently caused the accident?
Yeah, well, after watching these videos, I would definitely recommend getting a dash cam. Uh, but, you've got rights when it comes to things like this. And you may not know it at the time the accident happens, but if you talk to a professional or us, since we deal in this daily, we can tell you whether you have a claim or not. Now, just because you call us doesn't 100% mean we will represent you, but we will do our best in representing you if we do. And we understand how tough it could be to be in a car wreck or how emotionally traumatizing it could be. But I would highly recommend that you definitely get an attorney because we, especially us, will look out for your best interest and do what we can for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks, Sean, for joining me
Mm-hmm.
this time.
Thank you, Tyler.
Next time, we're going to talk about Black Friday injuries and deaths. That's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see who else we get on the show next time. It's been great, Sean. Thanks for coming and spending some time with me today.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me.
So, again, if you're hit by a drunk driver, if you are planning on going out, if you need a lawyer, you know where to go. The information's here. Don't drive inebriated, intoxicated, any sort of anything that could enable you to hit someone and swirl your judgment at all. If you're hit by a drunk driver, you know who to call. Again, it's 601-202-1111 or visit our website at pepperodom.com. Thanks for watching Legal Roundup. Until next time.